Hey everyone, and welcome. We know that keeping up with the daily news for your UPSC prep can feel absolutely relentless. So our goal here is simple, to help you cut right through the noise and focus on what truly matters for the exam. Let's get right into it. So here's a quick look at our game plan for today. We've structured everything to line up perfectly with your syllabus. We're going to start with the environment, then jump into the economy, look at some key governance issues, touch on society and tech, and then, super important, we'll hit some rapid-fire facts for prelims before wrapping up with a mains practice question. All right, first up, our planet, our policies. You know how critical this section is for both GS Paper 3 and your prelims. Today, we're covering everything from the smog in our cities to major moves in global climate talks. We're kicking things off in Delhi, where the Air Quality Index, or AQI, has shot up to 391. Now, that's not just a number. It puts the city squarely in the very poor category. And a number that high automatically triggers a whole series of emergency pollution control measures. And those measures fall under what's called GRAP, the Graded Response Action Plan. Think of it as an emergency playbook. Mandated by the Central Pollution Control Board, it lays out specific steps to take as pollution gets worse, targeting major culprits like stubble burning, vehicle fumes, and a big one, all that construction dust. And speaking of construction, get this, the National Green Tribunal's data reveals a really stark problem. Delhi is churning out 5,000 tons of construction and demolition waste every single day. But our capacity to actually process it? A tiny 7.5%. That's a massive gap. This isn't just an environmental issue anymore. It's a huge urban governance challenge. Okay, now let's shift from the city smog to the open ocean for something pretty fascinating. It seems totally counterintuitive, right? How can a destructive force like a cyclone actually do something good for the climate? Well, it works like this. The powerful winds churn the ocean, causing an upwelling of nutrient-rich water from the deep. This fuels a massive bloom of phytoplankton, which then act like tiny sponges, soaking up CO2 from the atmosphere. It's a natural carbon pump in action. Now, zooming out to the global stage, all eyes are on the upcoming COP30 summit in Brazil. And the big story here is a decisive pivot in focus. The agenda is set to really zero in on the needs of the global south, highlighting crucial issues like climate finance, getting technology to developing nations, and funding for climate adaptation. These are hot topics for your GS papers 2 and 3. All right, moving on to our second section, the economy in motion. Here, we're going to track some major policy shifts happening in real estate, the digital world, and agriculture, all of which could really shape India's economic path. So a really significant reform being discussed is all about beefing up the Real Estate Regulatory Authority, or RERA. The big idea is to give it more teeth. There's talk of a special fund for stalled housing projects, and, this is key, potentially making RERA the primary authority over the insolvency and bankruptcy code when it comes to real estate. The goal? Better protection for homebuyers. And here's another critical update, this time for investor protection. SEBI has put out a very clear warning. As this quote says, the digital gold you see being sold on all these fintech apps is not currently classified as a security. What does that mean for you? It means investors don't have the usual regulatory safeguards, leaving them pretty exposed. Now, to keep the digital economy fair, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs is pushing for something called ex-ante rules for big tech. Ex-ante just means before the event. So the idea is to regulate these huge digital companies proactively before they can stifle competition, which is a model very similar to what the EU has done with its Digital Markets Act. Over in the agricultural sector, we've got 3 important updates. First, a new pricing formula for sugarcane is on the table. Second, the government has given the green light for exporting 1.5 million tons of sugar. And third, the export duty on molasses is gone. When you put these 3 moves together, the aim is pretty clear. Support farmers while also giving a major push to the ethanol blending program. Okay, on to governance and security. This is where we explore that really crucial intersection of technology, the law, and our rights as citizens, looking at everything from citywide surveillance to election integrity. So check out this number. A massive surveillance network is being brought under one roof in Delhi. We're talking about nearly 300,000 CCTV cameras from different agencies in different neighborhoods, all being linked up to a single centralized police control room for monitoring. And that, of course, brings us to the fundamental question at the heart of modern governance, doesn't it?
How do we, as a society, strike the right balance between using technology for better security and protecting our fundamental right to privacy? This is exactly the kind of debate you need to be thinking about for your mains exam.
But technology is also a powerful tool for strengthening democracy. Look at this. The Election Commission is now using AI tools to hunt down and stop the flow of illegal cash and freebies during elections. And the results are pretty stunning. Seizures have already crossed the 1,000 crore rupee mark. This is a fantastic example for any answer on electoral reforms in GS Paper 2.
Let's move on to our next section, where we'll look at some really important social issues, from a landmark court observation that touches on the very fabric of our society to how tech is changing the job market for even our brightest minds. This is a really powerful statement coming from the Delhi High Court. By declaring that intercaste and interreligious marriages are actually in the national interest because they foster harmony, the court has strongly encouraged both the central and state governments to step up and create real, effective policies to protect these couples. Now, here's a trend you need to watch. As this chart shows, placement rates at the prestigious IITs have actually started to decline, and experts are pointing to two big reasons for this. First, a general slowdown in the global economy, and second, the disruptive structural changes that AI is bringing to corporate hiring, especially for top-tier tech jobs. All right, let's switch gears completely. It's time for a rapid-fire round. These are 5 must-know facts from today's news that are absolutely perfect for your prelims prep. Let's lock these in. Okay, let's run through these quickly. First, the Ministry of Road Transport is rethinking the entire national toll policy. Second, the RBI's big hackathon is focused on an offline version of its digital currency, meaning transactions without needing the internet. Third, remember that the NIRF rankings are an initiative of the Ministry of Education. Fourth, for cyber fraud, the go-to legal provision is often IPC Section 420 for cheating. And finally, India is actively engaged in critical mineral diplomacy with China, especially for those all-important rare earth elements. So, we've covered the what of the news. Now, let's get to the most important part, the how. How does all this information actually show up in the exam hall? What kind of questions should you be prepared for? Here you go. This is a perfect example of a potential mains question pulled straight from what we just discussed. It's asking you to dig into the why behind those ex-ante digital rules and then analyze their impact. It's a classic blend of economy and governance, ideal for GS Paper 2 or 3. And I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. Each news item we covered today, AI's impact, environmental rules, digital regulations, these aren't just isolated events. They are all building blocks. So the real question for you as a future policymaker is this. How do all these pieces connect to shape the larger vision of India at 100? That's your big takeaway. Thanks for joining me today.